You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, back to the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian, and joined, as always, by my co-host, Paul Garrison. What's up, Paul?
What's going on, Andre? How's everything?
Everything is good. Spring ball is starting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
15 practices that culminates in the spring game on April 20th. The basketball team is heading to Vegas to play in the Mountain West tournament. Chris Spearing and I will be heading up there Thursday morning in the wee hours to make it there in time for the 2:30 game.
Indiana Goldberg.
So a lot of stuff going on.
There's a ton of stuff going on. So, spring practice is upon us as we're doing a football episode with two former players as they're preparing for the NFL draft, Noah Tumblin and Jalen Mayden. But as you're going to watching spring practice, being there, I mean, what is it that you're most interested in seeing?
Well, I'm most interested in matching up players' names and numbers.
Yeah.
Because not only are there 27 new guys on the roster, but some of the returning guys have changed numbers as well. And so typically, the first day of spring camp, you still have some new guys that you're trying, but never, at least in the 3 years we've been covering the Aztecs, we've never had this many new guys.
Right.
And so I definitely need to keep a roster handy and figure out who's who, because in the practice jerseys, they don't have names on them. So it's a lot of, what number is that? Look at the thing. So I'm excited about that and figuring that out and seeing how long that takes. And then just seeing how it's a completely new coaching staff and seeing how practice is just structured differently.
Right.
We kind of know how Brady Hoke and his staff did their little 15, 20-minute segments and what they focused on and what they split out on. And I'm just kind of curious to see how different, if at all, it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be different. Is it going to be massively different? Is it going to be minor? I'm curious to see just how the structure of the practices are run.
You got my first two as well. I think those would be what I'm looking forward to as well. But I think after that, I think you just want to see how well the QBs throw the ball. They've obviously had tutelage a little bit from Matt Johnson, the new QB coach, and the QB position obviously in football is huge. And I think for San Diego State, they have obviously not been as strong as you would have seen that at some other schools at that position. But they also haven't emphasized it quite as much, and Sean Lewis clearly is. And so these guys have to be great for San Diego State and for that offense to be great. And, is there a difference? I mean, do you see a difference, and can you see a difference? Obviously they're going to be in helmets and that's it for that first day. But what does that look like? What does AJ Duffy look like throwing the ball? What does Danny O'Neal look like? What steps has Javance took after his sitting out a full year, being acclimated, being in his first spring? Kyle Crum, these guys, to really have an idea of just where are they, what confidence level do they have, how crisp are they, and then related to what you said, I'm interested in the speed. What does Aztec fast actually look like on the practice field? Because from what Coach Lewis said at his press conference, this will be like the slowest it'll ever be. Like what you see tomorrow is going to be as slow as it's ever going to be. But is it noticeably faster? It definitely seems, and I see the logic in it, is if you can, I guess that balancing point, right? If you can go so fast that you can get a lot of reps, then in theory, you should be able to get better because you have more opportunities. The flip side of it is, where do quality reps start to come in? And just by doing it fast, you're doing it fast, but how do you know if they're actually quality reps that they're getting, and what does that look like moving forward. And so I think those are the two things that jump out most to me.
Yeah, to just to add on to that, the offensive line versus defensive line one-on-one matchups are always. I tend to end up spending all my time whenever I do go to practices. I end up standing there and just watching those for most of it, and kind of neglecting the other positions. And they're obviously vital positions, but something Coach Lewis said last week was that Ross, Masuli, and Miles Morale are recovering from postseason surgeries, and they're going to be limited. So it's going to give the offensive line is going to be very young and very new, because those were the two guys, in addition to Christian Jones and Dean Abdullah, that were have played
Right.
uh, on the Aztecs. And so it'll be interesting to see where and who and where they line up between tackle, guard, and center, and how they do the first and second, even though it's the first day and probably not going to mean much, but it's going to mean some of the younger guys, like a Jonah Rodriguez, is going to get a chance to potentially run with the first team in some circumstances. And as I pointed out in my article about the 8 players to watch, Jonah was recruited by Syracuse and Mike Schmidt before he decided to stay home and go to San Diego State.
That's
And
right.
Mike Schmidt is now his offensive line coach.
Hmm.
And they both are Madison alums. So I think that rapport that they had from 2-3 years ago could be very helpful for Jonah, as he's, as a redshirt freshman trying to insert himself into the 2 deep. So those are things to look for as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, but I think you could take it off of just the offensive line. I mean, Coach Lewis talked about and he mentioned it, but he also made sure to underemphasize it, right? That they're going to start with a depth chart, but that it's going to change. The depth chart can change all the time, and so like I am curious who is running with the ones, who is running with the twos. Which running backs have separated themselves in the off season with Sobel and all of those workouts. Chris Johnson is a name that we continue to hear at cornerback, and it would be a surprise if he wasn't one of the first two. Even just from what I've heard from this group. And what are they doing at linebacker? I mean, where are all of those Sam linebackers lining up?
Yeah.
Do you want Trey White? I mean, you asked the question in the press conference to Coach Lewis, and they're like, we think he could be a good defensive end, but is that, and so what does that look like for him to have his hand back in the ground like he did at Eastlake High School? Caleb
Otluski.
Thank you. Otluski. Same thing. He looked really, really good rushing the quarterback at in the high school at Tyler High School, and or high school in Tyler, and he's there, and you just would want to see that. And then how are they doing at linebacker? Does Brady Anderson have another opportunity for himself?
Yeah.
They're looking for a bigger linebacker, because you only have 2 of them, so one of them has got to be somebody who can plug some holes. And that screams in some regards like a guy like DJ Herman. And it's like, okay, this guy's been a special teams ace. And then what does the new look, is the Aztec position, is that a new look position, right? They had a Husky at Washington, so you're assuming that they're going to have an Aztec at SDSU, and that's obviously what Coach Sumler told us a couple months ago, or a month ago. But what is that? Is that different? Are they what do they do differently? Is that with the 3-3-5, that Aztec was a little bit more free range, and will it be more traditional where that guy is almost a weak side linebacker in a 4-3, and then when they spread you out, then you do something else different? And so it's all of that kind of stuff, and who's lining up where, I think is wildly intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, the one last thing to add, someone who's not going to be at spring ball is Garrett Fountain. He entered the transfer portal last week. Odd timing in a sense, because it's so late into the semester. But I think we had heard secondhand that he wasn't sure about coming back with the coaching change, he didn't know if he wanted to run it back with a new coaching staff. But he ended up coming back, and I had a chance to chat with him real briefly via text, and he obviously loves San Diego State, and but with all the changes and all the new people around, he was just looking for another place that he could go play his final season in collegiate football, and we wish him the best. And it's an opportunity for somebody else to step up, and there's plenty of guys behind him that will have that opportunity. As you said, guys like Trey White, Otluski, Dom Oliver, things like
Mhm.
that. So it's obviously losing a super senior captain
Right.
is a blow, but it's an opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that you expect more departures, right? After spring. I mean, that's going to become, kind of normal. I think what's interesting about this, obviously, because he's a super senior, I believe he's able to leave anytime he wants, and he can be in the transfer portal. It's already official that he's in. But there are other players, that where that's going to happen. But I just think, um, the timing of it is if you're San Diego State, the timing of it, you don't want it at all. I don't think there's a way you could possibly talk about Garrett Fountain not being on the Aztecs and think that SDSU is better for it, right? Like even if the guys you mentioned are just studs, having that guy as your
Oh yeah,
bottom rotation, I mean, there's no way that he's, and I would have projected him to be kind of like I think in fact you said it, like that's like the one guy that you would expect to be on that
yeah,
defense. But Patrick McMorris last year left after spring ball.
yeah.
And I think that the repercussions of that, I think, had a bigger impact because of when he did it versus if that had happened at the front of it. And I think again, Pat was going to be here. His brother got a job at Cal, and that opportunity to work with family, it came up when it came up, kind of a deal. But the timing of it, is kind of classy on Fountain's part because he would have taken reps from all of those guys that you just named. And, he obviously would have been positive for everybody as well in terms of his leadership and things like that. But getting used to the fact of like, what do they do best? They can start towards the end, especially to start answering that question. And so just the timing of it, while it's never ideal, if you're going to do it, for his teammates' sake, I think he picked in a pretty professional time in which to make that happen.
That's a great point. And using McMorris as an example definitely uh, not alleviates, but exacerbates that
Mm-hmm.
position. That if he was leaning towards leaving, and it was like, well, let me go through spring camp and then leave afterwards, then yeah, all those reps and all that development from the guys behind him definitely. I get that. I think imagine if Marcus Ratcliffe was not an early enrollee and was in spring last year and didn't get those reps, they would have been much worse off, at that Aztec position coming in the fall without Marcus Ratcliffe having that spring experience. So yeah, for sure. All right. As Paul mentioned in the beginning, we got to talk to two former Aztecs who are preparing for pro day and hopefully the NFL draft and mini camp and so forth. Noah Tumblin, cornerback, and Jalen Mayden, who was the quarterback, also played some safety and is working out at that position as well. Hopefully for NFL scouts. Let's get to Noah Tumblin's interview first, and then Jalen Mayden, and then Paul and I will be back to give our takeaways. We want to welcome back Noah Tumblin to the podcast. Noah was on episode 23 of the podcast,
Let's
and now
go.
we're sitting here with episode 122. So we've come a long way since then. It was about 2 years ago. I think it was the summer of 2022 when we got a chance to talk to you. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Enjoying Florida, enjoying my time out here training, just getting ready for pro day.
Yeah, before we get into your training and pro day, you had an opportunity to come back to San Diego State for one more year with the COVID eligibility, but you decided to pursue your professional aspirations. Why was that the best decision for you?
I just felt like I had shown like all I needed to show to play at the next level this year. I didn't really give up much this year. And also I just feel like just because there's an extra year doesn't necessarily mean like you should use it. I mean, it benefits some people, but me and my team weren't necessarily sure it would benefit me. You know, I got good feedback from a couple scouts and teams, so it was enough for me to take it because I've also seen guys who have come back for their 6th year and it didn't really pan out so well. So not saying that would have been me, but it was just something to think about, or injury, of course, too.
You mentioned you're in Florida. Can you tell us why you're in Florida and what you've been doing since the season ended?
I came out here probably like a month after the season ended. I was just training in San Diego before that. And actually I went to Texas first for this college gridiron showcase. So I went to Texas first and then I went to Fort Myers because this is the training facility I'm training at. And Taylor Hawkins went here. So we had like a little state connection, I guess. The guy who trained him was watching me and hit me up. And my agent's also from here, so it just kind of worked out.
How did the Gridiron Showcase come about? Like, do you have to be invited? Do you apply for it? Like, how does that work?
I'm pretty sure you got invited. I got an email, but honestly, I don't really know how it works because I don't really know how it works. I just know I got an email, and then my agent handled everything else.
Do you have any more details about that event and how it went and what was
Yeah,
it?
it was actually really good because I got to see like really where I was at in like the recruiting process. So the first day was just meetings. Like I had 5 interviews. I did in my notes what the teams were because it was a while ago. I had interviewed with the Bills, the Steelers, Eagles, Dolphins, and Chiefs. And then so I talked to them in person. And then Friday or the day after, I think it was Saturday, we had practice, which was pretty much just individual drills and then one-on-ones. And all the scouts were there from all 32 teams, so they got to see us in a one-on-one situation. And then the next day we had like it was called a game, but it was more like a scrimmage. It wasn't like one of those big East West games where we had like jerseys and stuff. It was more like a scrimmage, but there were scouts there too watching us. So it was really productive. I got to talk to the scouts and see where I was at. And then after the game, I had 2 more teams like email me like fill out some questionnaires and stuff. So it was pretty good.
Great, man. So what is the feedback that NFL teams have been giving you?
Mostly they just really wanted when I was talking to them, they mostly just wanted to see what I was gonna run, and what my 40 time would be and stuff. And then some of them asked me how I felt, sort of being new to the position, like did they think I was still raw and stuff like that, and just kind of how that transition was. But mostly we would watch some of my film and just see like how I was playing. And honestly, they picked the best games too. So we actually saw a lot of good stuff on film. I didn't really have to answer to me like, bad questions. So it went pretty well.
Yeah, I bet that pick at Oregon State looked good.
Yeah, most definitely.
So we there's obviously been a lot of DBs from state who have gone to the league. Have you picked their brain? Had a chance to get some advice from any of them?
Yeah, Darren Hall and Taylor Hawkins are definitely 2 people I've kept talking to ever since they left. And Trent Thompson a little bit too, but Taylor and Darren more. So they definitely gave me a lot of information. So I feel like I'm pretty prepared for what's coming next. And then as the process moves forward, they keep talking to me and asking me how I'm doing. So I just really, yeah, talk to them.
Yeah, you mentioned this team's asking you about, if you feel like you're still raw. Like if for those of you listeners that didn't watch episode 23, you were a quarterback in high school. You never played defense. You
Yeah.
get recruited to San Diego State as a corner, and you're what, third or fourth year playing corner. You make all Mountain West second team. Um, so if for those listeners who haven't watched that or listened to that, definitely go check it out.
I'm
Um,
sorry, Andre, I have to interject. You forgot to mention he was the best Mira Mesa
oh
quarterback.
yeah.
You have to,
Yep,
you have to,
that
you have to
too.
make sure, you have to make sure that that gets
Yeah,
mentioned.
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely also listen to J.R. Tolver's
Yeah,
episode after that when we
exactly.
told
Yeah,
him that that's what Noah said.
it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely. What am I correct? Is Sedarius Barfield also working out with you in Florida? Is in and how's that been?
No, so we were at the college gridiron showcase together.
Okay.
So I was there with him. He's actually in Tampa. So he's in Florida, but he's just in Tampa, which is like 2 hours north of where I'm at.
Cool. Are you guys kind of going through this process together and kind of leaning on each other?
Yeah, me, him, and Moose actually, because Moose is training for safety. So we've all three been talking. We're in a little group chat, just comparing like how we've been doing and just talking to each other, stuff like that.
As we talked about a lot of San Diego State DBs that have played in the NFL over the last decade, at corner and at safety, we've seen some people who played corner at state move over and play safety in the NFL. Are you primarily sticking and talking to scouts about corner, or has safety been brought up?
Most for the most part, it was just corner, outside corner with my length and stuff. But there
Mhm.
were a couple of teams that said with my ball skills that they could see me being, like a free safety, like seeing stuff in front of me and like just, playing like outfield kind of.
I believe SDSU Pro Day is coming up. I saw a tentative date on the 19th. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 19 still.
So what you mentioned teams want to see what you run, what are you hoping to accomplish at Pro Day?
Um, Honestly, my numbers have been pretty good in everything. I just the 40, I did hit a 4.4 twice. I hit a 4.48, 4.49. So I'm hoping to run that obviously. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm pretty confident in my training and I feel like, if I could run it that time before, I could run it again. But a lot of people honestly don't know that when you train, like you don't run like a 40 like as many times as you think. So
Yeah.
the last time I ran that was probably like 2 weeks ago. And so I feel like I've been training and still like getting better since then. So I feel like my time will be around that, if not better.
I think the last time that we talked to you was at the very end of the spring game, and
Hmm.
we talked about you had those two picks in the spring game, and Moose was able to hit you that one time because you weren't allowed to touch him. I remember the whole thing,
Yeah.
and you know there was you seem to be a little bit down on the depth chart.
Hmm.
Turn it around in summer, you come around and now I think objectively you were the best corner. Like you lead
Hmm.
dead and the whole bit. Um and so like what was it over the summer or what did you do? Because I think a lot of young athletes who could be listening to this, they want that secret to success too and how
Yeah.
you can develop and progress so much.
Honestly, since my third year, my redshirt sophomore year to my redshirt senior year, we had like the same group of corners that whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really just a battle between us five, going back and forth. So the year before that, my redshirt junior year, I got beat out, so I didn't play as much, and it's the same group of guys. So I never felt like it was unfair because I think everybody in that group is NFL caliber for sure. So this summer, I didn't really change too much. I just kept doing what I always do and stuck to the script, and it worked out for me.
Now you mentioned like all those guys coming back, and I know we said that, but now you have a little time to reflect on it. Um, why why didn't you transfer? Why didn't you you know what I mean? Like a lot of people like make that decision and sometimes it's hard when you're still on the team to ask that question. But like why
Yeah,
did that group stay together in such a great way?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Absolutely, beg your pardon. So I was saying you talk about all of those guys competing, and usually, especially now with the transfer portal, etc., and you can go play somewhere else right away.
Yeah,
It's seeming to be rarer and rarer to have what you had, which is you had that group of guys who all kind of competed and were close like that all the way through. I mean, what
yeah.
do you think it made that group be willing to do that?
I feel like behind the scenes we were just all really good friends, So we were all like outside the field, we were always helping each other. Like even the guys in front of me, I'd help them, they would help me. Like there was really not too much animosity, and I felt like we all five of us, me, Dallas, Des, Noah, and Chris, like we always wanted to see each other succeed, no matter who was in the game. So I feel like that was a major key, and we all still talk now. We're all still in the group chat. So I think us just being really close as friends and brothers off the field is why it was so easy.
Hmm. You was there a game last year or where you really felt like everything really clicked? Because I mean, again, dude, you were playing at such a high level.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, a lot of people think Oregon State just because of the pick, but I personally think Boise State. I think Boise State was like one of my best games. Like I had a lot of PBUs and against a good receiver who just recently transferred to TCU, who was like on a lot of people's like boards and stuff. So I feel
Mhm.
like that Boise game was really when I felt like, yeah, like this is what I could do like all the time now.
Hmm.
Yeah, the team didn't have a lot of success last year, but individually, we said you made second team all conference. PFF had you on the All Mountain West team, and you just propelled yourself in the NFL scouts' minds. As we go back to where that spring ended to where your season ended, like that 7 month period, could you have imagined like having that much of a turnaround to your game and to your spot?
I definitely didn't think it was impossible, but I definitely didn't see all of this happening. I for sure went into the season thinking that I just wanted to do enough that the coaches wanted me back for my 6th year, you know.
Mhm.
So there's definitely a little bit of like not expecting it, but I knew what I could do at the end of the day. Like at practice, I know what I'm doing. And then even the year before, in the times I played, like I didn't give up any touchdowns the previous year. So it wasn't like I was getting beat a lot when I was playing. So I was just really confident in my abilities.
What in terms of like, you talked about wanting to run a good 40 and that's what scouts are looking at it. Are there things that they're telling you that they want to see you get better at in terms of
Yeah,
like technique?
my main negatives I got were pretty much just my off man coverage and then just my strength. There's a couple times where they said I was in position, but the I just kind of got like outbodied by the receiver. So just improving my strength and then my off man coverage.
Your cornerbacks coach, Demetrius Sumler, what did he mean to your growth and development over your 4 years, 5 years at San Diego State?
Um he definitely meant a lot. He was the only coach I've ever had at corner, the first coach that I had at corner. He recruited me knowing I was a quarterback, and I told him to this day that I appreciate him for taking a chance on me because he didn't have to. So he definitely was hard on me, and he always wanted to see me succeed. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would be here today. If I had another coach. So I definitely am appreciative of all the things he did for me in my 5 years.
During your 5 years there, there were, that's right, uneven play from the quarterback position. Did they ever flirt with you switching back?
Now people would joke around about it at practice, but
Oh,
I
we
was
heard it a
always shut.
lot. We heard it a
Yeah,
lot from fans. Yeah.
yeah, but I was always shutting it down because first of all, I hadn't thrown a ball in like 3 years. Like I can't just pick up and throw a ball again. And second of all, I almost started to feel disrespected because I'm like, am I not getting it for corner? Like, why can't I just stay at corner? And I always felt like it's easier to go to the league at corner than it is at quarterback because there's only like what 32 quarterbacks. You got two corners at least on the field. So I was looking at it for like more realistically in terms.
Yeah. No, I was other than tape, man, I missed your Mira Mesa days, but with the number of people who I've seen be like, there's a QB right now on the roster, there's a QB right now on the
Yeah,
roster. I'm like,
those are just the
okay.
hometown fans. But I know what was best, and the corner was best for sure.
No, I just love it. It was all love. But when you look back on your career, do you have like a favorite play or a moment?
Probably my senior night against Fresno. Like all my friends and family were there, and then I like made a play on the sideline, and I was able to point at them, and it was just really nice because that was part of them. I've always had a lot of people come to games, but there was a lot of people at that game, so it was cool to see everybody there for me for my last home game.
And how about during your time, who was the toughest player that you had to cover?
Toughest, probably my first year when I had to go up against Nevada, Romeo Dubs. That's still my worst game ever. I still think about that game. So yeah, Romeo Dubs for sure.
Was that the game at Carson?
Yeah, yeah, Carson, the Carson days.
Yeah. You guys won that game though. I think it
Yeah,
was
we
like
did.
last second win, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Looking ahead to this year's team, you're obviously not going to be on the team. And we talked about those five guys. Well, four of them are gone.
Yeah.
Johnson is left.
hmm
What makes Chris, such a good corner and someone that will get to showcase more this year?
I mean, as soon as he came in, you could tell he was like on a different level. Like a lot of guys, they need a year or two to develop, but when he came, he was kind of like no Avenger, just ready out the gates to play. He learned the playbook really quick. And he was just really good, fundamentally sound. Like when I saw him come in, I was like, yeah, you could tell he's been playing corner for a lot of his life. And he's also really good overall. He could cover, he could tackle, he could do it all pretty much.
There was another guy on the roster in the cornerback room we didn't get to see play because he had to sit out due to a 2-time transfer. Tavion
Mm-hmm.
Beasley. For us who don't know too much about him, what is he as a player, and what could he basically bring to the table this year?
He kind of reminds me of Darren Hall a little bit. Like, I can't say how they're gonna play yet because we know what Darren did. But just watching the practice, his technique. He's also another fundamentally sound guy, and he doesn't really give up too much passes in practice. He's also pretty physical for his size too. He's not the biggest guy, but he's not afraid to get dirty.
So I've said this right. Have you lived outside of San Diego before?
No, never. So it's the longest I've ever been away from home.
And how's that going, man?
Luckily it's Florida, so the weather's actually probably a little bit better than San Diego right now. It's like nice and sunny pretty much most of the days I've been here, so I can't complain too much.
Is your family able to handle it all right?
Yeah, I mean, my mom and my dad are definitely missing me. Me and my brother were on the game a lot, so we're able to chop it up still.
Yeah. And then one last one from me, man. Talked about Coach Sumler. But Coach Lewis, new coach at State, he retained Coach Sumler.
Yeah.
Why was that a great decision for the new staff?
Well, Summer's from San Diego, so he has a good connection to the San Diego guys who you always need to keep a connection with. And it's just the numbers and stats speak for himself. Ever since I've been there, every corner, at least one corner, made it to the league is still there. Luke, my first year, Darren, my second year, Taylor, my third year. So yeah, ever since he's been there, he's been putting guys in the league. So as a coach, you would want to keep that around.
Absolutely. I think Noah's going to be number 4.
Definitely.
What do you think? What do you think about the change at head coach and bringing in Sean Lewis, a more offensive minded guy? And you obviously you're not on the team, but like
Yeah.
you might have sat in on some of those initial meetings before you made your choice. What is
Mhm.
your overall impression of Coach Lewis?
I think they actually listened to what, for the most part, what we were saying in the meetings. We were definitely asking for, more open-minded, fast-paced offensive kind of guy because, we've been doing the same thing for a while. So a lot of people wanted to see a change. And I think they definitely did that, with Coach Lewis being an offensive-minded coach. So I personally like what they're doing. I think it's a step in the right direction. Only time will tell.
When you say they listen, are you talking about like the meetings with the athletic director?
Yeah, like when we were in the
Hire?
meetings, a lot of things that we were asking for in a coach and the program moving forward, I feel like they are starting to answer a lot of those questions. Yeah, solve a lot of those problems, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely heard it. Some other of the seniors say that as well. So
Yeah.
definitely. So pro days in like 8 days. You'll be back in San Diego in the next couple days.
Yeah, I'm coming back on Sunday.
And then what's the calendar like after that?
So pro day Tuesday, and then I'll see. I don't have any yet, but there's a chance I might get a couple of top 30 visits in between now and the draft. But it's just pro day and then the draft and then mini camp after that. So hopefully around like I already know if anything I'm gonna go day 3, so I wouldn't expect to know anything until April 27th or a little bit after that.
Awesome. Will you be in San Diego with family on that day 3?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Cool. Noah, thank you again. A hometown hero. Definitely Aztec fans will be eagerly waiting to hopefully hear your name called on that day and see where you end up. Thank you again for all the time that you spent with us, and hopefully we'll keep in touch. I think we might be at Pro Day. I'm not sure, so we might see you and ask you some questions afterwards there.
Yep, sounds good. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to talk to me today and all throughout the years.
All
Absolutely.
right, have a good week. Bye.
You too. Later.
We want to welcome Jalen Moose Mayden to the SDSU podcast. How's it going, Jalen?
It's going good. How y'all doing?
Doing very well. Thank you for
Well,
asking.
we've been hoping to have you on for a couple of years now, and so we're glad we finally get the opportunity. The season ended in late November, early December. What have you been doing since then?
Really, everything right after the season, I talked to my family and kind of just started making decisions, and we decided that the athlete approach was a little bit better for me. So that's why I took my mindset into going for training then the location of training, because there's so many different training spots out there. I thought about going with Said out there in Florida or Noah. They're both in Florida, just two different places in Florida. But I decided I wanted to be a little closer to family just because of my 6 years in college. I really never got to come home ever. I always tried to stay during the breaks and stuff to work out, throw in any receivers that were going to be there. So this is my first time really just being home for more than, I guess, 2 weeks that you would get in the summertime. So, yep, found a training facility out here, and I mean, I've loved it.
When you mention going the athlete route, is that particularly training for a DB position than a quarterback, or are you still trying to do both?
Really more of the DB position. I've kind of kept up with the throwing just in case any team asks on pro day, but for the most part, I've just been working as a DB or that hybrid linebacker, kind of like how the Cowboys use their that bigger safety role type.
And so SDSU's pro day is coming up. What is it that you are hoping to accomplish next week?
Really just show how athletic I am. I got my 40 time down. We had some goals when I first got there, and I've exceeded all my goals. So just to put it all out there on that day, because that's all that really matters. You could run good times all the way up, and some people, they just, stage fright gets them on pro day. So hopefully, or not even just hopefully, just put it all to work on that day.
You mind sharing with us any of those goals that you've been passing, or is it not ready to get those out?
I would say, the results will show on pro day.
Perfect. Your older brother Jared, he obviously played in the NFL. He's currently signed with the UFL, right? That's going to be starting up shortly.
Yes, sir.
So how did that help you first when you moved to safety a couple of years ago, and now as you're preparing to go to the next level?
It helped me a lot. When I was telling him I was going to go to safety, he was kind of excited. He was kind of nervous because I'd had the frame, but he had never seen me in that light because I'd always been the quarterback for when we were playing with each other in high school. And when we were, at Alabama, Mississippi State, I'd always been the quarterback. So it was rough at first. He was excited for me, and honestly, when I first got over there, I was garbage. I'll admit that I was not good at all. I was just very athletic, so being around the ball and making plays helped me. Then that summer, going before fall camp, he would be on FaceTime with me every day, just alignment starts, working on all the drills. He would send me drills to do, and he would tell me to record myself, send it back. And then fall camp, I started getting the hang of it, and that's when y'all got to see that progression. So he helped me a lot, and he continues to help me. He's been working out with me out here since he's in Arlington, and that's not too far from where I'm training at. So he's came a couple of times and just showed me the ropes, and this is what they're doing. This is how he fits in their scheme and how I would fit in a scheme similar. So it's been real good.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most. I was gonna say that was one of the most impressive parts I thought about the whole transition. Is every practice that I was at, you made a play. I tell anybody who asks, I've never seen a ball carrier have more joy carrying a football than you. And so I was so happy to see that smile on the interception. I was like, okay, it's still there. And obviously you go back to quarterback, but I just remember like, all right, the ball keeps finding this kid, man. This is impressive. But then there was that smile on your face when you were running the ball, and it was pretty neat.
Also, shout out to Coach Hope, because Kyle Hope, because he always just had us in good spots. And if you just trust what he was talking about, you were always going to be around the ball if you just did what he told you to do.
I remember talking to Coach Maddox right when you had moved to safety, and he was like telling us his initial reaction. Oh, are you sure your court? Can you want to hit people? Do you remember like the first tackle you made in practice as a safety, and you're like, okay, that I kind of got that jitters out or that play out?
Well, before that even starts, we do a lot of hidden drills, I guess, to start the season. So I kind of got a couple of those jitters out, like just form tackling, fitting up the other DBs, doing those little drills. But honestly, I didn't even get my first couple of tackles until like the fourth or fifth time we were doing it, just because I was missing a lot and being safety, you're deeper. So most of the plays, are done before they get to you. But I remember the first time it was me and Martin Blake, and he had just it was like a stretch, and he just juked back inside, and I was coming inside out, and it was one of the loudest collisions like that whole fall camp, and that's when everybody kind of like really knew, okay, he's here to play, and that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, I'm really gonna do this, and I'm here for it.
You're 2022. We've heard the story. We know we lived it, right? Moving to safety, coming back after 5 games, playing quarterback, having a great end of the season. If you look back on it now, those 11 months, right, from January to November, like, must have been one of the wildest yet most rewarding like periods of your life. How do you look back on that period?
It was kind of a blur for a lot of it. Just transitioning back to a quarterback, finally getting the keys to a whole team, and then it wasn't like a big veteran team. I was a lot of young guys and a lot of new faces and a lot of new coaches. So trying to figure out what the scheme was going to be and then how each player was going to fit in the scheme. Then we had some injuries that were unlikely. Then Raphael not being able to play, he would have been a big part of our offense too. And just learning offense, getting other people on board, because you got to get the young people, the young guys who don't really know how to learn offense. They're used to learning 6 plays in high school and getting told just catch the ball and be an athlete. So that was all pretty challenging. And then just overcoming losing, because that's never good, and keeping everybody on track. And then we finally put it together that last game. But it was tough and it was long, but it was definitely rewarding at the end to see like all the young guys getting hope and then just telling them to stay with it. And then they got a new coaching change, but now they know everything it takes to succeed in some operations like that.
In terms of working out and for the draft as a safety, what feedback are you hearing from scouts or trainers about things you got to work on and things they like about your game and that stuff?
Most of it's been positive. Obviously, there's been little things that I have not had game reps at that I had, messed up on a couple of times, but then I had to iron them out. But just some guys, like notable guys that I've been training with, like Jarian from Florida State, Deshaun Preston from Mississippi State, Cam. He just actually got rated like the #1 safety for the career at PFF for Tulane.
Oh,
So those are
wow.
some of the guys that I work out with, and they all say like if they didn't know me before, like or had my Instagram and stuff, they would have thought I played safety the whole time. So that's pretty reassuring. As far as looking smooth in the DB drills and getting in and out of breaks.
And what is it that you've heard? I mean, from NFL scouts or people we've been talking to in that level, just about, because again, you're transitioning back, right? And so that obviously isn't easy. But I mean, what is it that they want to see from you?
Pretty much the same thing, just looking smooth in and out of breaks, obviously running fast, because the safeties at the combine, I think the fastest was probably a 4.4. If not, somebody maybe ran a 4.3, but it wasn't crazy fast time. So just looking the part, and size-wise, they all been saying that I've had the size and all of that looks nice, but eventually it's going to come down to pads and being a ball player.
That's it. Has that Toledo film? Has that played in
Yeah,
anything? Because
that's
obviously,
it.
you got to start, led the team in tackles, I believe. I mean, so is there enough film on you from that position to at least have something in which to build on?
Just a little bit. That game, I had a couple of snaps and a couple other games, plus special teams have been a good factor, just showing like pure athleticism, getting down the field and making people miss. But just the combination of all of those, plus the running side of the quarterback, like showing that athleticism too when the ball's in your hands, it was all helped me when I put that together to send out to different company or um I can't even think of the word, different teams.
Yeah. I think getting that one play against Fresno State up there, I think it was the most Michael Vick-esque kind of run that I've seen a San Diego State quarterback do. It was just completely nuts. But when you look back on your time as an Aztec, I mean, what do you have like a favorite play or something that comes to mind for you?
I always say this, I always have two, but the one I always say that just comes to mind every time I think of like what really sold it for me is my college career was the last drive in Utah State where I got to go in, we were losing, and sitting behind some great players, your confidence kind of just gets low on you. So you get thrown into a game, doesn't matter if you were winning or losing, but to have success, is kind of the big moment for me that I loved when I was at Aztec. And then probably that whole Toledo game, just going and doing it for the first time and having the team count on me. I wasn't in there just being a quarterback spot. Like I was actually back there protecting the defenses, the end zone and stuff like that. So those two moments really stand out to me when it comes to just being an Aztec.
So you're talking about the championship game.
The championship game, yes.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the QBs who are, still on the roster? Javance Johnson, Kyle Crum, and, just what you've seen in their development?
I think I start youngest to oldest. So Javance, he's a funny guy. He's a real good guy. And he just reminded me of when I was a freshman, just the type of arm talent he had, or he has, is just amazing. He could put the ball anywhere on the field. There's no throw that he can't make. And just watching him develop throughout the year, obviously he goes down the scout team, but I like to just check in on guys and just see how they're doing. But then I think I want to say it was a hamstring injury or something, so he was off for a little bit. But the times that I did get to see him and then working with him in Indy, he has a bright future ahead of him. And then go to Crum. He reminded me of myself later on in the years. He probably doesn't have the arm talent that's just gonna pop up at you, but he's definitely accurate and in the right system where he can get the ball out quick and make smart decisions. That's where he'll flourish because he's a real smart player. There was some times where there was questions that he would ask me and I was like, dang, like I didn't even think he had the knowledge to even like recognize that. Like, when did I see the safety rotate? So I know to work backside to just get to the dig and the running back check down quicker instead of staying front side. So both of those guys have a bright future, but I'm really looking forward and I'm proud of them.
Obviously, they're going to be playing under a new head coach and a new offensive system. Obviously you're not on the team anymore, but what have you heard or seen from the new coaching staff and Coach Lewis, and how do you think that move is going to reflect on the team, next year and moving forward?
I don't know too much about Coach Lewis. I haven't got the chance because when all of that was happening, I was focusing on graduating and then obviously my after football or after college career. So if it's anything about like what they did at Colorado, I'm pretty sure the guys are in good hands. I've been seeing the training videos probably like how y'all have, and they look like they're having fun. I see a lot of smiles. And yeah, I think it's going to be great. If that offense comes over, I'm pretty sure both of those, Kyle and Javance, will do great in those offenses because it's explosive. They have some quick things. They're going to stretch the field out vertically and horizontally, so that should be good.
Does a part of you kind of wish like you had one more year and you could play in this offense and put up some numbers?
Most definitely, because I was telling my just the guys that I work out with, because they were always asking me like, how did that NFL pro style offense feel? And I was like, it's a little different. I remember when I first got to San Diego State, I was dropping under center snaps because I never took them. But to be in an offense like that again would be fun because I grew up around Texas Tech, Baylor, SMU, and all of those schools. So teams that would just throw the ball and they'd probably have 40, 50 targets a game. And it's crazy. So I would love to get back in that and just be able to dink and dot all the way down the field, hurry up tempo. It'd be fun.
Earlier you just mentioned about seeing the smile on guys' faces. I think one of the things we heard a lot when we talked to your teammates was about your positive mindset. You always had a smile on your face, even through the ups and downs. Why is that important to you? Where does that come from?
Really just the love for the game. A lot of people, I don't know. I feel like I get kind of biased, Texas football versus all the rest. But I feel like the South, I feel like a lot of people, football is like their escape. And I feel like in San Diego, you kind of get lost into that because people, they care about football and they love football, but obviously there's more things out there to do than football. So I always try to keep a smile in on my face for my teammates because I know that they have other stuff going on. But for me, like, at Mississippi State, there was always a bucket by the field, and it's kind of like you take your thoughts and you empty it on the bucket and you leave all of that off the field. And what you do on the field is what you do on the field. So I always just try to keep that mentality. Even when we were losing, I was trying to like keep them off the noise. Don't get on Twitter, get on all these other things, and don't read about that. Like, we're on the field, we're all we got, and like just keep a smiling face, be positive, because eventually this is going to turn around.
The other thing we heard about you was also like you like jazz music and you play the piano. And when did
Mm.
that start? Who got you into that? And is that something that you're going to continue doing?
Yeah, well, I'll get it right now, but I keep I don't know if
So
you can see it. I keep the
Oh, I got the
keyboard in my
keys.
room, so
nice.
I can play to this day, but I hung around my grandparents a lot growing up as a kid. We didn't live in the area that we were playing sports in, so we would always have to go like to my grandparents' house and then to the school. So when after school, I'd go back to my grandparents' house and wait till like my mom came and picked me up for when she got off work. So I'd spend a lot of time over there. And my grandpa, he played the piano, and eventually, I want to say he got sick and he couldn't play anymore. So I was like, oh, well, I'll learn how to play, so at least I can play like some of his favorite songs. And then after
Mm.
time passed, I started getting really good at it. Then my friends started asking me songs to learn. And then I fell in love with like the jazz and blues. And then I started listening to different blues artists and jazz artists. And I know I just fell in love with it, and it just became my thing ever since.
Do you have a favorite jazz or blues artist?
Blues, I would go BB King.
Mm.
And then there's a newer guy. He's around my age. I actually got to see him when I was in San Diego at the House of Blues. His name is Kingfish.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
guys, yeah, they're pretty good.
Have you heard of Kamasi Washington
I haven't.
and Terrace Martin? Those are guys that put out music now. They're probably in their 20s or 30s, and they're pretty good. I'd recommend them.
Got you. Yeah, and then
Robert
more.
Robert
Jazz
Glasper.
style. What was
I don't
that?
know if you know Robert Glasper. He's also a guy that does a lot of music with them too.
I've heard of him. And then for jazz, I'm more Oscar Peterson, just because the things that he does on the piano, I try to mimic.
Awesome.
I had an introduction now, so I'm from San Diego, so I don't,
Gotcha.
but I had an introduction to Texas football. I went out to this year's championship in AT&T Stadium, wrote an article about it. A lot of people talking about Coach Horton because I had an SDSU podcast shirt on, and they're like, "Oh, okay," that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Can you return to the glory days a little bit of high school and let us know, obviously know you had huge accolades and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, was the championship at that same stadium then? Did you play in it? And just for people who maybe not hasn't seen it, I mean, there's nothing like it.
So Texas high school football, I would say, is a beast, is a monster. When I first started high school, it wasn't. It was at the old stadium, and then
Okay.
that one got demolished and in there because it's always been in the Cowboys like
Right.
facility. But the newer stadium is definitely better. You got the big jumbotron, but we never made it that far.
Okay.
Every team that we lost to did end up going to the state finals, and it was crazy. Like we were that game away from
Ah,
going on. So. But high school was great. That stadium is great. We never got to be in it, but the stadiums that we did play in, any playoff stadium is going to be pretty good. Once you get to like the colleges and stuff, most teams play at Baylor or TCU or something like that. So that feeling of getting a big stadium, I want to say we played in Allen, that big stadium. I
uh-huh.
don't know if y'all heard of that, but that's probably one of the biggest high school stadiums out there. And we played there too. So that feeling, like, and then once you translate that to college, like it almost doesn't even feel a big difference just because you're used to that big crowd and that big stadium.
Yeah, I was completely impressed just with the passion and with the whole thing, man. It was great. We got out there for like DeSoto and I think they won, and then oh man, I'm blanking on the other good team. Both the Dallas area teams won.
That was North Shore, right?
North Shore, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like when North Shore beat the Houston team first, and they like ran over to the tunnel where DeSoto was about to come out, and they were like, "It's your turn now to beat the other team." And they really had a good time with it. It was great. But tell us, as wrapping this up, man, what comes for you next after pro day and those process for you?
So after pro day, I will return back to Texas and keep training up until like draft, and then just be talking with my agent about what we're hearing from teams, free agency, late round, something like that, and just talk best fits. There's been a lot of, I know y'all know, but there's been a lot of releases and trades and all of that going on right now. And safeties are getting cut left and right. So I'm just, what scheme and fit would be best for me? And as far as if it's free agent, you get to kind of pick out of the teams that you get from. So just being in the right situation for long-term success.
Moose, thank you so much. It was good to finally get you on the podcast and then talk to you about your Aztec days. We look forward to seeing Pro Day. Either one of us or maybe both of us might be out there next week. So I'll look forward to seeing how you do there and how the draft process goes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right, have a good one. Paul, that was interviews with Noah Tumblin and Jalen Mayden, aka Moose, as everybody likes to call him. A great nickname. What were your initial reactions? I mean, we've talked to Noah before on the podcast, and we hadn't had Jalen on the podcast, but we had a lot of press conferences and post-game interviews with him. So we had a chance to conversate with him. What were your thoughts about where they're at now and where they're hoping to be in the next 45 days or so?
Well, I mean, I think that the first thing that always jumps out to about both of them, because as you said, we've talked to them multiple times in different situations. I'm trying to think back. No, I guess we would. I mean, the thing that I always think about when I think about people in general is everyone can show a lot of character when they win and they're successful. We talked to Noah after the spring game, and Coach Hoke is telling us like, oh yeah, it was good to see him actually play well because he hasn't been playing very well. And in that moment, obviously he had success in that one game, but to talk and to be able to ask him like, hey man, you haven't had the greatest spring, where are you at? And for him to show the quality and the character that we know of him, I think it's really impressive. And then the same thing with Jalen, asking when they have a losing streak and you're asking the same questions and you're on the road with them and you're asking those same questions, and for him to answer in such a way that was always respectful, that was always encouraging to his teammates, and then obviously to see it in the interviews that we just had, NFL teams aren't going to have to worry about bringing either of these guys in and what that is going to do to that locker room dynamic. And so I think just their quality as individuals, have stood out. I think the first time that I ever talked with Jalen was when he was making that change from QB, and it was at a pro day, I believe, not last one, the one before that. Yeah. And he was just explaining his decision and what went through with it and all that kind of stuff. And just like, man, you can see why. For both of them, like why their teammates and their coaches love them, and there's that's the right word. I mean, there's a deep respect, admiration, and love from their teammates, from their coaches, and I think that came across why that is in those interviews.
To add on to what you just said, especially about Mayden, you can make the case that his NFL prospects at safety would have been better off if he never was the quarterback.
100%. He could have said no.
He could have said no.
Yeah.
I want to stay safety. I don't care that all the top 3 quarterbacks are either transferred or injured. Like, I want to stay at safety. This is where my money. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I'll go play quarterback.
Yeah.
Even at that time, as we've known now, hearing from Ryan Lindley and Moose, like, he wasn't promised to be the starter when he came back, right? He and Leo Amavai took first string reps all throughout practice. I think up until the day before, Mayden didn't know he was going to start. So like he didn't even make that move knowing that he was going to actually start at quarterback. So that selflessness, team first attitude, could, as we talked about with him, could hurt because of the lack of game film out there. Now he's got time to make it up, right? He has, his workouts. Scouts can see pro day, things like that. But I think that adds to the character of the type of person he is that he was a very team first guy that, you could make the case maybe hurt him his future professional playing days.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I think as a human, I think we all want that to be rewarded. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You want those kind of kids to be able to see that reward. And life isn't always that way. And obviously, if he had stuck with safety, I think he's the starting Aztec safety last year. And he's above Ratcliffe, and I think that would have been his position. And as you say, there would have been that much more development. But at the same time, I think the other part of the character is their ability to like kind of turn the page and to say, okay, this is where we're at. And so like, let's go, let's look for the best fit. Let's work out. Let's, try. And, he didn't want to give us a number, but he clearly hinted that he feels like he can be very close to the top of that, safety class in terms of how he's going to run. The athleticism, I don't think anybody should question. He's huge.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of how quickly he could pick it up. But of course, talking about with Noah Tumblin, he's also a QB who, is still translating over. And I think if you're an NFL team and you're thinking about, seventh round pick kind of guys, sometimes taking a lottery ticket kind of pick is smart. And both of these guys, because of their relative inexperience at the position compared to guys who've been playing it their entire life, they could be a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
2 years from now than what they're able to show, even though Tumblin obviously has a ton of experience at the position. I mean, you talk about just the weight training that you have to do for safety via QB that he wasn't doing in high school because of all of those things. So I think there's a lot to like from that perspective with both of them. I think personally, that again, it's going to come down to how they run. And if they have that like measurable good speed, I think that's going to do wonders for them because I think they got everything else, obviously how they do in some of the jumping drills and things of that nature to show like at what level their athleticism is. But we've seen it with both of them that they're going to be good with their athleticism. I think Tumblin's length, I think is a huge plus for him. You mentioned the other guys who were at state and moved to safety and stuff. He is way lengthier than those guys.
Agreed.
And, yeah. And so it's like, it's, he's got the package. I mean, he's got the package to be able to do it. And then it's just, obviously it's a matter of the high pressure tests that are going to be happening next week and getting into camp and making noise. But I think they can do it.
Well, think about like we've praised Coach Sumler plenty.
Yeah.
And we should do it again because this is the guy who saw Noah Tumblin play quarterback and never play defense and said, I want to give this guy a scholarship at cornerback.
Yeah.
He's never played the position. And then he turns around and in 4 years or 5 years turns him into a potential NFL draft pick, day 3, undrafted. But this guy, he's going to be playing in the NFL. Wherever, whether he gets drafted or not, he'll be on practice squad and he'll make his way up to an active roster, in my opinion. But I think that's kudos to Coach Sumler for seeing that and saying, like, I see this guy being an elite cornerback, and I'm going to do my coaching and my development to get him there. And so I think that's more praise for him. The other part, I think one of the most interesting things he said, which we had heard from another play, and I think it might have been Keenan Christian who said it during an interview somewhere, that they listened to us. Right?
Yeah.
Talking about JD Wicker when he was at the press conference when they announced the Coach Hoke won't be returning. He said, I want to meet with our seniors and get their perspective on it. And you could say that and you can meet with them, but then you can go turn around and hire who you want to hire. But I think Keenan Christian said it. I don't remember what interview it was, but he said it, and then Noah said it as well. He's not even on the team anymore, but he was still part of those talks because he hadn't made his final decision yet. And he mentioned, he gave us details about we wanted an offensive minded, we wanted a different phase, we wanted open-mindedness. I think he used that word. And it makes sense for someone like Brady Hoke that's been around for 40 years, maybe not be as open-minded because he has done it so long for so many years his way, and it's worked for so long. And I thought that was interesting. I like hearing that perspective, and whether it's going to mean more wins and conference championships, we'll see. But I think that helps. The player mindset anyway.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic with that last aspect of it, just because it's interesting in the sense that, like, okay, so you got the players on the team and you really value them as athletes and Aztecs and people who've actually been in San Diego State and have had success. And so, like, their opinion should really matter. The flip side of it is they were all trained by the other style, you know what I mean? And so that it's an interesting dynamic there. But I agree. I found that to be really, really interesting as well. And I thought his description of Chris Johnson was really, really good. I thought Jalen Mayden's description of Javance and Kyle, I thought were really good. It's what we've seen from both of them. Going back, it's interesting, going back to Coach Lewis's press conference, they asked him about QBs, and they said, what do you need out of QB? And he said, no matter how big your arm is, you got to be able to process it. And that's even doubly important in his offense because they run it so quickly. They got to call it, process it, put it into the game plan. And that's basically what Jalen just said about Kyle Crum is his ability to be able to do that and the accuracy to be able to put it where he needs to go. Cause that was then his second thing, right? Like, it doesn't matter how big of an arm you have. If you don't know where the ball's going, that's always going to be, an issue. And so I think that, I think judging from his high school tape, I thought there was an accuracy element to Javance's game. So I don't want to make the impression that that's not there, but definitely have seen that from Kyle, and definitely have seen that kind of that moxie of it. And I think it bodes well for his chances to win this job, moving forward. I think the other piece of it that always fascinates me is just, and this is, I think, where the beauty of, this brainchild of yours as creating the podcast, it's just the having these a little bit longer, not after press conferences, not after football games, not after practice, not at the Tuesday press conferences. I think you just really get the sense of that these kids are people. They've been doing this for a long time, and to get that picture, that window into some of those private ideas and those thoughts, man. Playing jazz because he listened to his grandparents, Jalen said, etc. I think all of that stuff is just beautiful, and I think it's a great opportunity to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely. I remember when the stories came out about playing the piano and the jazz. I was like, okay, I gotta ask him about that.
Yeah.
When we get him on the podcast, and things got busy and we weren't able to make it happen, but we finally got it. So that was cool. Any last words before we close it out?
No, just the excitement of having at least a little bit of on the field, conversation. I'm very, very excited to be able to not just talk about Aztec Fast, but to see a little bit of Aztec Fast, to see how that has evolved from the off season into spring ball. It's an incredibly exciting time, and I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to be able to cover it.
Yeah. As always, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate all of our listeners, subscribers. Thank you for liking and sharing and following. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes come out. And we always appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. If we didn't have listeners or viewers, we wouldn't do this. So we're thankful for each and every one of you.
No doubt.
And we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.